Hi there, Laura Wilson from Gold Star Work. Today I'm going to show you how to do the alcohol drop method for backgrounds for paintings. One of the reasons why I like acrylic paint is that I can do some really interesting effects using different methods and techniques. And this is one of the techniques that I use for my flower fields. Now for this you'll need some rubbing alcohol. I just buy this at the chemist, and you need to use one with quite a high alcohol rating because it needs to be able to push the paint out of the way in that wash that we're doing. And if the alcohol content isn't high enough, it won't do that, and that's why a lot of spirits and things won't work, because the alcohol content isn't high enough. But the rubbing alcohol works really well, I find. So for this method, I'm just going to use a plain canvas. I've just unwrapped this, I haven't done anything to it at all, and I'm going to do a base coat of yellow, and this one I'm using the cadmium yellow light, which is a lemon type of yellow. And I'm using a big brush, and I'm just going to do a base coat very quickly. So when you do this alcohol drop method, think about the colour that you want to show underneath, and in this case I'm going to be doing a red poppy picture, and I want a glow showing through, so that's why I'm painting this part yellow. When I do my white daisy fields and I do the alcohol drop method for the backgrounds, then I just leave it white, because the daisies I'm doing are white and it shows up as little white daisies in the background. But in this case I want to do a nice yellow glow in the sky. So I'm just going to paint over this whole canvas. Not doing anything fancy. Then I'm going to wait for this to completely dry before I go in with the alcohol method. Now this is all dry. I'm going to use a transparent orange to do the next coat. Now I want to use transparent colours in here because I want the colours from underneath to show through and provide that glow. So this time we're going to use a very thin coat of this and then do the alcohol drops on top. So that's what it looks like when it comes out of the tube. And I'm just going to use water to thin this down with. Because if your paint is too thick, the alcohol drops will not spread the paint out. So we're just going to go over the whole canvas this time. And I'm just putting my brush in the water and then putting it back in the paint. I'm not actually washing the brush, I'm just dipping it in just to make sure that paint is really flowing nice and smoothly. If any bits feel a bit thick, I'll just go in with some plain water. And I'm going over the whole canvas. And I'm not worried about my brush strokes, because you won't notice those once we put the alcohol on anyway. And I'm not worried about water drops either. There's not worried about these air bubbles. either, because you won't see them later either. And I'm going to use, this is a small canvas, I'm just going to use number 4 round brush. And I'm just going to dip it straight into my bottle. And then I'm just touching the canvas, and you can see the effect you get. Now, just wiped my brush off a bit before I put it back in the bottle, just so I don't get orange paint in my alcohol. And depending on how much alcohol you've got on your brush, will depend on how big your dots are. You can use smaller brushes or bigger brushes depending on what you want. And I want to be pretty random with this. And you can also just let the drops drop off your brush. So you can make quite a few dots with one brushful. So just go over your canvas as much or as little as you want. I'm doing several drops in one dot down the bottom because I want some bigger dots down the bottom than I have got at the top. And I don't want to make a pattern. You can flick the brush to get those little drops off if you want more little ones. Because this is a wildflower field, I want to make sure it's very random. You can see it's going to be random anyway, but you could make it into more of a pattern with the way you place the dots if you wanted to. And then you need to let that dry. It needs to dry completely, and I wouldn't use a hairdryer on this. I would just let it dry naturally, because if I tried to use a hairdryer on this, it would move that paint around because it is so thin, and I would lose some of those lovely patterns that I've got. So I would just leave that to dry naturally, and then I can come back with a darker colour and do another coat. So when you're doing it, you think about the colours you want to use, what you want to show through, what colours you want to be the ones underneath and which ones you want on top. And I find that it works best if you do the light colours underneath and you build up to your darker colours. But it just depends on the effect you're going for. So keep that in mind when you're choosing the colours you want to use. And this time I'm going to use a naphthol red light. This is also a transparent colour. And again, I'm just going to put some water into that paint, make it nice and runny. So you can see how runny that paint is. I'm going to go over the picture again. So this is all dry before I started putting the paint on. Now if you've put your paint on and you're worried about it being too thick, you can get your water spray bottle and just give it a spray to thin it down a little bit. So if you put it on too thick, it's not a complete disaster. You can do something about it. I'm going to get my alcohol again and my paintbrush and do my little splatters. So you see the yellow coming through from underneath, but you'll also see parts of the orange showing as well that we did on the second coat. And I'm doing it quite random from the last time. Last time I was just pasting it on to show you how you could do that, but you can also just drip it on wherever you want dots. And you can get lots of different sizes and shapes that way as well. So you can see the orange and the yellow showing through. And we'll just leave that to dry. I'll show you a bit of a close-up there of the dots that are going on. So this will be the background for my next flower field painting. I wanted to show you how you can combine the alcohol method with other methods to make really interesting backgrounds. So for this painting, I've already done a layer where I've just done the paint in the stripes that I wanted, and then when that wasn't quite dry, I sprinkled some water on it and I sponged off to get that splattered look. But now I'm going to go over it with some transparent yellow this time. I want a transparent colour so that the other colours will shine through, and do the alcohol drops and just make a bit more pattern on here. So I'm going to just use my spray bottle of plain water, and I'm just making this canvas damp so that paint underneath was completely dry. And it's actually been sitting here for a few weeks, so it's a very dry canvas, so I'm just wetting it down to help me spread the watery paint that we're going to do. Now again, we're going to make our yellow really watery. And I'm using yellow for this one because I want to have that glow when I finish. So this is still going to be part of the base coat, and I'll be doing things on top of it again. So you want quite a runny consistency, almost like a watercolour paint. And then I'm just going to spread it over, and I'm going to try and work pretty quickly because I don't want it drying before I get to the alcohol part. But you can see how using that transparent colour unifies all those colours underneath and gives it a lovely glow, and that's what I'm after. So it's like glazing, but instead of using a glazing medium, I'm just using water and paint. So I'm just going over the whole thing. And then I'm going to get my rubbing alcohol, and I'm going to use a round brush, number 10. I'm going to dip it in my alcohol, and then I'm just going to drop it on to my canvas. You can just put it on, touching it lightly, or you can just drop it on depending on the look you want. So I'm quite happy if these dots are quite random, and I can even splatter them on. So I'm letting some of that other colour show through where the alcohol pushes that wet paint that I've put on there, the yellow. And it pushes that away and shows what's going on underneath. And you get some really interesting patterns coming through. I'll show you some close-up of what that looks like. You can see how the underneath colours are showing through. I'm still getting some of the white and green that I put on there earlier. And when that dries, it'll just have that lovely extra dimension in the pattern in the background. I thought you might like to see what I do with my alcohol drop backgrounds. This one here I've been making daisy pictures. And you can see the alcohol drops there in the background. And for these ones, I've just left the canvas white. I haven't done a base coat first. And those white areas are the distant daisies out in the background. Is my idea for those. And here's another daisy one here. The colours are a bit brighter in this one, and you can see the alcohol drops there in the background, just suggesting distance by suggesting that there's daisies in the back there that we can't really see. They're just a little blur in the back. Here's one with a different colour palette. This one's done in pinks. You can see the pattern that the alcohol drops make in the background. So these have been glazed over and lots of layers added on top. So it's just adding a suggestion for my picture. Here's another one that I've used the alcohol drops on, just in the background there. Zoom in so you can see. So there's the alcohol drops there. For this one I've done a blue background, and then I've gone over with white and green to get those different colours. So it was giving that blurry kind of look to the background. And this one here is a small one that I've done, and you can more clearly see the alcohol drops here in the background, and I've done different layers of colours of blue for those, and then I've painted the daisies over the top in layers. There's just a few of my flower field paintings that I've used that alcohol drop background for. There are lots of other ways you could use it. I'm just showing you what I was doing, so you'll come up with your own ways. So I hope that was helpful and you got a new technique out of it, or learnt some tips that you didn't know before. And I'll see you next time. Bye.